Welcome to the Pool and Spa Depot family. The following video is to help you understand what is involved in building your new pool. Your pool installation will require the following input from you. Number 1, to mark the desired location of the pool and equipment. Number 2, to order the necessary sand for the size of pool you are installing. Number 3, to check with your local codes office for permits and other requirements. Number 4, also make sure you are not placing your pool over your septic system or drain fields. And number 5, call 800-351-1111 or simply 811, or you can visit 101call.com for a free inspection of your pool site to check for buried utilities. Like any outdoor construction project, unforeseen circumstances may occur. Weather, scheduling, ground conditions, etc. If you have any questions at any point in the process, please reach out to your local Pool and Spa Depot store service department. Here are the numbers. Call the number closest to your location.
The following video should help you in building and assembling a 15 by 30 stealth semi-inground swimming pool. We hope this video will be informative and helpful, and we look forward to seeing you post your pictures onto our Stealth Facebook page online. This is a 10 by 10 tamp. It's made from cast iron. Home Depot and Lowe's sell them. And this is used for packing the sand in the bottom of the pool and compacting it ready for the liner. A pickaxe is always a handy tool to have. This is a grub hoe. It's got a shovel on this end and a pick if you run into a rock or two that need to come out. Both a round and a square point shovel. You may not need both, but both are handy to have. A rake is important for leveling the sand in the bottom of the pool. You do not have to have one quite this wide, and one can be created, quite frankly, out of a 2x4 to create a nice straight edge. And then a broom is also used for brooming the bottom of the pool after it's been compacted. Those are the large tools that you're going to need aside from excavation. Okay, so the first thing is don't be afraid of all these drills. We have more than we need. Each drill has a different function. We do this every day for a living. At the end of the day, you really just need one. However, it is handy to have an impact gun and a drill. The impact gun currently has a 9/16 deep socket well. This is going to be the most frequently used tool for assembling your pool. The bolts that bolt the panels together, of which there are 8 on each panel, are used with the impact gun to tighten up, and a wrench on the other side, which we'll show later in the video. A drill, of course, is good if you need to drill through the panel and or use it to penetrate through later on the coping. We have another impact gun with a 5/16. This is actually going to be used later on the installation of the coping and the capping. And then of course we have a 1/2-inch drill bit here that is used for 2 different things. One is used for the hole in the fiberglass step where the bolt is going to hold the panel to the step, and the other application for this, which we'll show later, is for also installing the capping to the top of the panel. So clearly you can make do with 2 of these, but you will need at least one. We have a sawzall. The sawzall is used for cutting the PVC pipe, cutting the rebar should you need to. and or any other cutting on the job site. We have channel locks. These are a pool builder's best friend. Large channel locks are handy when it comes to assembling your pool equipment. We use large 2 and 3 inch unions, and so a large set of channel locks can avoid a lot of frustration. A number 2 or number 3 Phillips head screwdriver for the screws of the return jets. A 2-pound hammer for driving layout stakes. Any rebar on the job site, we recommend you pick up this OSHA compliant cap. This is to put over the rebar to prevent injury in the event somebody falls onto that rebar. These are side cutters or metal cutters, and these are great for cutting the bands off the pool kit. So we have a 3-inch hole saw. This will be used for cutting in lights or return jets later on at the access panel on the pool. Of course, we recommend a 100-foot tape measure. You can make do with a smaller one, a 50, but you will need a large tape measure for laying out the swimming pool. And we'll go into some detail on how to do that with some layout images and measurements in the video. Of course, some good gloves to carry the steel with because of the sharp edges. We don't want anybody to get cut. A roll of good quality duct tape, maybe 2 rolls. This we use to install on the vertical seams of the wall, and that is simply there to provide a vacuum for the liner to allow it to conform to the shape of the pool. Lay out upside down marking paint. This is great product to have when you're laying out the pool. And as a matter of fact, before you even build the pool, this is typically used to lay out and show where the pool is going. Maybe live with it for a day or 2 in the backyard. Make sure it's the final location, because once the hole is dug, of course, that's where the pool's going. Now, we'll do another tutorial later on in the video about the PVC, but it is very important that you use a cleaner for the PVC to clean both the pipe and the fitting. And then we recommend the use of the heavy-duty clear PVC cement, not the medium-duty and not the light-duty. So the heavy-duty clear PVC cement works great for gluing up the pipe on your pool filter. Teflon tape. Now, I decided to show this in the video because we see this as a common mistake. Any threaded fitting that's going to be screwed into a bulkhead should be held always in your left hand, regardless if you're left-handed or right-handed. The Teflon tape that's going to seal this thread should be in your right hand and be wrapped clockwise. If you hold the fitting in your left hand and the tape in your right hand, you will never make the mistake of wrapping it backwards, which means when you screw the fitting into the bulkhead, the tape comes off. So, fitting in the left, tape on the right, 6 to 8 wraps with the pipe Teflon tape, and then some will even wipe a little silicone grease on the fitting to help thread that into the bulkhead. Here we have some shims. These shims are used for leveling the panels, which we'll show you in just a few minutes as we start to assemble the panels. That is all the tools you need to build a stealth semi-in-ground pool. Most of them are in your garage or workshop. And if these are not in your garage or workshop and you are not familiar with how to use these basic tools, then it is probably not advisable to attempt to build your own swimming pool. Rather, find somebody who is DIY friendly and not unfamiliar with these construction tools. Here we're going to basically build out a filter pad. The filter pad we're building out here is to accommodate an in-ground pump. If the installation application is calling for the swimming pool to be built underground, then we are going to have a self-priming in-ground pump. That said, we have to prepare a base for it. We've chosen on this one 2-foot by 2-foot patio stones that are 1.75 inches tall. And we're going to go ahead and put those in place right now. We already have 3 down. And your equipment pad for the Stealth semi-inground pool is really just as simple as that. We like to use sand as a base so that if it needs a little bit of leveling, it can be done without any problem. And now we're ready for the equipment to be installed on the base when we have brought the plumbing over. Okay, here we have 3 in-ground pool returns. 2 of these are going to be for the water to return back into the pool, and 1 of them is going to be for a light. So what we've done, we've installed the gasket right here, which just simply push fits into the holes, and we've put our 2 pilot screws in place. There's 4 screw holes on the return. We're using 2 of them so that when this return is installed into the back of the swimming pool, it will be tightened up with this white nut. The liner will be put over the return, which we'll see later in the video. And these screws will be easy to pick up from this side of the liner. So when we feel these 2 screws, we will be able to pull them out, install our faceplate, which is in another box, and reinstall the faceplate, the gasket, and the screws back together. So this is what it should look like at the rough-in phase prior to the liner. You have the back nut, you have the gasket, the neoprene gasket, and 2 screws with 2 more in the hardware bucket ready to be installed at a later date with the faceplate. So this is the faceplate, which will actually go on the outside of the liner, and this will go onto the steel panel where the liner will actually hang in front of these 2 screws. These are simply screws here to indicate where your penetration holes are. So once the liner is in, we'll pull these actually by running the screwdriver through the liner once the pool has a 12 to 16 inches of water in it. And this is the faceplate, which will then go over the return fitting, and these screws will then automatically line up because we have pilot screws in place. We'll show you the installation a little later this afternoon.
For a second,
So what we're going to do is we're going to support the panels on both sides and cut the band right here in the center. The reason we want to make sure that the panels don't fall over when we unband them is so nobody gets hurt. So very carefully make sure that you could have this side up against a building or this side supported. We just want to make sure the panels do not fall over and hurt anybody. What we're doing is unbanding the panels now and laying them out around the job site so that the assembly of the panels will be a lot easier. Go ahead. Be careful not to cut your hands on the band. This is metal strapping that can be a little sharp. The best way to cut the band is with a metal side cutter. If you don't have one of these tools, a grinder or a pair of metal cutters of any kind can cut those. So we're going to leave this stack banded for a minute. These are our straight panels, and these are our radius panels. So we're going to go ahead and uncat the band on the radius panels. Thank you. And careful for them not to fall, and also careful with the sharp edges. It is advisable to use gloves while handling these panels. And guys, we'll take these radius panels and put them on the other end of the job site. That way we don't get in Jerry's way during the excavation. Okay, so today we are installing a 15 by 30 semi-inground Stealth, approximately 8 inches out of the ground from the highest mark, using the step on the bottom of the deck as a benchmark for a finished grade. What we're doing right here, we have a 34-foot long string line which is actually 2 feet longer than the pool because the pool's 30 feet long. So we've allowed for our 2 feet over dig on either end. And what Jerry's doing right now, he's cutting in 24 inches. Now, this guy's been building swimming pools for 20 years and knows what he's doing. And so he's only allowed himself 2 inches of wiggle room. If you are building your pool, we might recommend you do a 2'6" over dig. We're going to use a 2-foot over dig. We also understand that that might require a little pick and shovel work on our braces that come out 22 inches. So what we've got right now, we've got our straight line, which is squared off the house to ensure that the pool stays square to the house. We're measuring off the string line 24 inches. He's got a stick of rebar in his hand, and in a moment he's going to let go of it, and it's going to plumb drop down into the dirt. Go ahead. And there you have the rebar sticking in the dirt, drop from 24 inches, where he will now drive it in, and this will be his first corner point. Now, the measurement that he came off the string line is 9 feet 6 inches. That allows for 2 feet of the overdig, plus 7'6" for the radius to the straight wall transition of the pool. So the radius panels that are going to be coming around this corner transition into the straight panel where the brace is at 7'6". But because we have our layout at 34 feet, we need to counter that back and deduct the overdig. So 7'6" off the pool measurement, 9'6" off the overdig measurement, and we have our first corner mark pinned and established. Now we're pulling a tape measure over the pin that was just laid out off of the string line, and he's going to come 15 feet, which is the straight wall side of the 15 by 30, and he will then pull his 24 inches off the string line. He'll line his tape measures together, and we'll drop the pin into the ground. If you have rocky or chilty dirt, the pin might not be so easy to enter the earth, in which case you can catch it as it falls or see the indentation on the mark of the rebar when it lands on the ground. So now we have our first 2 sidewall pins, and we're going to move over to the other side of the pool to lay our other corner pins. So at the end of this, we will have 4 corner pins that will create a rectangle for just the sidewall panels. And the measurement we're using here is exactly 15 feet, which is the pool measurement. And then we will check diagonals shortly and adjust accordingly as needed. So we're pulling 15 feet, and we need the tape measure. So we're going to make sure our pins are square now by pulling the diagonal. And Jerry, the diagonal measurement on the 15 by 30 square pin to square pin is? We're gonna make sure that our diagonal measurements are equal on both sides. So if the diagonal measurement on these 2 pins and these 2 pins are the same, then we have a perfect square. This process can be a little bit tedious and requires the tape measure and the pins to be moved and adjusted and fine-tuned. We want to make sure these pins never move because they're squared off the house. And so the 2 pins that we measured off the straight line to the house don't change. And then these 2 pins will square off of these 2 pins on a diagonal. Yep. And we will provide diagonal measurements with the drawings that will allow you to reference that. Depending on which size swimming pool you build, it will vary on your diagonal measurements and your sidewall measurements, and each pool will come with a layout that gives all this information. Something to also notice while Jerry is laying out the diagonals is the dirt that we cut out of the hole is very vertical. What we have found is unskilled excavators or non-swimming pool excavators will come in and they'll excavate a hole like this, but the dirt will be chamfered off at an angle. And where we run into difficulty is the top of our hole may be on point perfectly with the measurements that we need, but if this dirt is tapered into the hole, that leaves for a lot of handwork after the machine has exited the job site. So it's very important if you're hiring a bobcat operator to do this portion of the installation, which is highly recommended unless you happen to be in the excavation business, own an operator, an excavator, or know somebody that does. That is the number one mistake we see made all the time. Make sure your overdig measurements are clean and vertical and not sloped so that you don't have a clean and precise hole to build your pool in. The little bit of extra time that it takes to do that will save you hours on your build time. The excavation on this hole took 2 hours and 30 minutes, and that's with a skilled bobcat operator. So if you are buying the pool in anticipation of building it yourself, so far you've been able to watch your pool installation take place remotely. Typically a skid steer operator and a machine is going to charge by the hour with a 3 or a 4 hour minimum hourly requirement. You'll see in a moment, in a couple hours from now, why it may be worth keeping that skid steer operator around, as we are going to be pouring concrete on the backside of our straight wall panels. This will allow the bobcat to maneuver the concrete back here to the yard, or you can always let your bobcat operator go after the minimum 3-4 hours and wheelbarrow the concrete on the side of the pool. We'll demonstrate both methods later this afternoon. So they've got their string lines nice and tight from rebar to rebar, nice tight string lines on the side panels. These are the critical measurements on the oval pools. If you were building a round stealth, we would have one measurement point in the center. If you were building a 24-foot round stealth, you would measure out 12 feet, and you would simply paint an orange circle on the ground showing where that 24-foot circle is going. Obviously, if you have a different size pool, a 30-foot round, then you would lay out 15 feet and essentially put a rebar in the center, paint your line, and then your panels will erect right onto that paint line. We have another pool called the Deer Creek, which is a little more complicated to lay out, but essentially you're going to lay it out much like the oval, but it will have some inverted radiuses on the side of the pool. And there will be instructions, drawings, panel layouts, and diagonal measurements provided with the pool. So this is the radius pin. Basically, we have a 15-foot wide pool. So we're pulling one pin in the center of that 15-foot measurement. Half of 15 is 7'6". So our mark is 7'6". Now we're going to take a tape measure and hang it over this center pin, and we'll draw a paint line all the way around. Now this is where you're going to find out if your excavator dug a nice clean hole that you don't have to do any hand shoveling on. There we go. Nice full radius. So there is the end of your pool, and that is how you will lay the radius out. Now, if this was a 15-foot round pool, we would just simply conclude the circle instead of the semicircle, and that's what we would lay the panels out to. Same thing on this end, 7'6" to the center. Drive the stake in, hang the tape measure, and we'll paint out this end. Now, if your excavator did get slightly off on the dig, you can see we're a little tight here, but there's guys smaller than me out here that can squeeze in behind here, and we'll be able to bolt the panels up right here, no problem. But we recommend hand shoveling or hand cleaning that out rather than disrupting the job site at this point by bringing the excavator back in. Nicely done. So now we're going to begin, the guys are going to begin to start bringing the panels down into the hole and get them ready to be bolted up. So fellas, we've got them all laid out and placed fairly close in location. The steps are made from fiberglass, so they're rather heavy, and recommend at least 3 or 4 sets of hands to lower them down into the hole. The face of the step will go right behind the orange paint line. And then the back of the step can just lean up against the overdig for right now. And then we will build the rest of the panels, and we have some bracing system to put up underneath here. This is also where we'll be pouring some concrete later on. Now the guys will start to bring the panels down into the hole so that there is less to carry as we start to bolt it up. On a 15 by 30, there are 12 radius panels that make up the ends of the pool. 2 of those 12 panels are slightly shorter on this particular model. It's important to check on each model as they differ that you are putting an odd panel on either end. So we have 2 short panels. One will go on that end, one will go on this end, and it does not matter where in sequence they go because it will make up that same radius of 7 foot 6 inches. But we don't want 2 short panels on one end and missing on the other, or your pool will not be square. So please make sure we check the label on the side of the panel that you have an equal amount of each radius panel on either end of the pool. So this is the 2 foot step panel, and as you can see, there are holes running down the length of the panel. We are going to select 2, 4, 6, 8 of the holes evenly spaced from the top to the bottom. We're going to clamp the panel to the step. Go ahead and hold that up. Now we've already pre-drilled the step, but we want to show where the panel is set back off the step about 1 inch, allowing a reveal for the liner to transition into the step. So what they're doing right now is they're clamping the panel to the step, and if you'll look over here, the holes in the step are lined up. So we are going to pre-drill this top.
1 second, let me see if I can get focus. Okay, go ahead again.
We're going to pre-drill this top hole, and then we're coming down every other hole, all the way down. Now we've already pre-drilled this, and the easiest way to do that is to take a magic marker and mark every other hole. Then you can unclamp the panel, drill the holes, which is basically what I'm going to do right now. And here you can see where we have already done that earlier this morning. So we're going to do that on both sides of the pool step so that when we take these components down into the hole, they will simply bolt back up together and realign themselves. Okay, so if you remember earlier in the video, we show the panel flush with the top of this trim strip, and we clamped the panel to the step and pre-drilled through the side of the step with a 1/2 inch drill bit so our bolts could tighten up. Now, the step is a 48-inch step and is raised up on block to accommodate the 52-inch panel. And so we'll use patio block underneath here to get everything shimmed and leveled. Right now, we're bolting up 1 panel to the step to begin the process of bolting up the panels. The reason that we're choosing this as a location is it creates a 90-degree and it's a little bit more self-supporting and stands on its own so that we can begin the panel layout. And you'll see Jerry's putting the bolts and the nuts through the step. And then the impact gun with the 9/16 socket driver and the open-ended wrench will now get used to tighten the panel to the step. So the guys are bolting up the straight wall panels on the side of the 15x30 aligned with their ground pins that we laid out previously. The inside face of these panels will touch the string line, ensuring that we have a nice straight wall. They're putting the bolts at the top and the bottom of these panels, allowing them to be able to be maneuverable and flexible. And shortly, we will begin the process of leveling these panels up using the same instrument that was used to excavate the hole. And so this is where I recommend, if you can find a good Bobcat operator that has the instrument needed to level the dirt, he is likely more than willing to hang around for another hour or two, even if it costs a couple of $100 extra to help you with this process, because the instrument he uses to dig is the same instrument we will use to level the pool. Okay, very important step not to miss. You'll see how we're using a rebar to bend the panel in and out. Here, Jerry has got his 9/16 bolt, and we are adjusting the inside panel to make sure it's perfectly flush. So as well as having a pool that's level up and down, it's very important the panel this way is nice and smooth and flush. So go ahead, Jerry, we're gonna tighten that up. Now we're going to do the same thing on the bottom and make sure it's flush down at the bottom. And you really want to have somebody on the inside that is watching the two panels to make sure they're perfectly aligned. You can come back later, as you can see all the bolts are missing over here, and put those bolts in after this process is done. Once the pool is level up and down and in and out, then we will take the shims that you see in the center of the pool, and we will begin to fine-tune the leveling of the pool itself. Okay, this is our patented bracing system for the Stealth. And what you'll notice about this brace is that it is solid, where a lot of in-ground pool panels may only be supported with a piece of angle iron. This is what we call a full buttress support. It's also got a leg stiffener right here to give it additional strength. Jerry is going to bolt the bracing up to prepare for concrete, which will be here in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. He's putting a bolt through the top of the brace in the top hole, and then the second one. And then you'll notice right there, there's a little slot for bolt number 3. You will definitely benefit from a impact driver for this process. A lot of handwork, not a terribly skilled part of the pool process. So if you've got some just general labor help that can help you put the bolts in, and then you'll want to make sure the face of that brace is butted up, touching the swimming pool to provide all the structural strength that this pool needs once you fill it with 50 tons of water. So the outward pressure of the water with these braces embedded in concrete are what really give this swimming pool unique and unmatched strength. Here you can see we're a little tight right down on the corner of the brace right there. So I'm going to go get Jerry the pickaxe, and you can see we're going to do a little bit of digging out towards the back of the brace. That's completely normal, common. It just means we got a nice tight dig here with not a lot of slop, and we'll dig that out with the pickaxe, and then the brace will fit right in there beautifully. So there you can see we're just picking out that corner of the dirt right there, so we can accommodate. The last brace is actually going to go where the radius and the straight panel meet. So the braces are only going to go where the radius and straight panel meet, and on any other straight panel. Okay, once you've got the pool bolted together and the inside panels are flush, we want to take and put a duct tape seam straight down between them. Now this duct tape does two things. One, it creates a little bit of a buffer for the liner, but what it really does is creates an air stop. So when we pull a vacuum on the liner, this does not allow air to suck through the panels. So we just want to tape up each and every joint vertically as we go down through the panels. All right, now we are over at the filter pad. You can see this customer, because the pool is down in the ground, upgraded to the in-ground self-priming pump. This also was sold with our premium package that comes with the UV disinfectant system and the multi-cyclone pre-filter. So these two items are going to greatly reduce how much work this pool is going to take to maintain. Now over here, we have the standpipe for the filter and the neoprene O-ring, and the filter sand is about to go in. It's very important that you cover this standpipe. I'm going to help him out right at the moment, and we'll remove that O-ring so it doesn't fall in. And I'm going to hold this standpipe kind of centered, and he's going to just simply pour the filter sand down into the filter. And this filter is going to take a total of 5 bags. And the general goal is to fill the filter system up about 2/3 of the way up. And obviously make sure that you don't have to use duct tape on this center pipe. But if you don't use them, put a solo cup or something over this, make sure sand does not go down inside it. All right, so we have the UV system over here, which we'll be installing in line on the return side of the pool. So after the water has gone through pre-filtration, through the pump, into the filter, it will be coming out on the return side, clean and filtered, and there it will be sanitized with this UV sanitization system. And over here, we are starting the plumbing process of tying it all together. And we're starting with the multi-cyclone. This is the multi-cyclone discharge line. And we are, first of all, using the PVC cleaner to clean the pipe, like so. Once we've cleaned the pipe and we've cleaned the fitting, we will now let the cleaner fully dry, and we're going to wrap the glue around the fitting and then the pipe, and then we will install the two together, give it a slight twist, and then we're going to hold it for just a minute while that glue bonds. The reason for the cleaner is not only to remove the clear film off the PVC, but it also helps a molecular bond between the two pieces of PVC. So we'll do the same thing with this piece here. Now, if the homeowner at a later date wanted to get a longer piece of pipe and run the discharge line somewhere into the bushes or something, they could do that. And now we're going to put some glue here, some glue here on our previously cleaned fitting, and we're going to push, turn, hold. This handle here is the valve. When it is at 90 degrees to the pipe, it means that the valve is off. When we go to clean out the pre-filter, the cyclone, we will turn the handle and it will allow water to run out of here. And because it's on a swivel here, it allows us to point it into the bushes over here. So we're going to turn that off so that when we go live with the system later on, once the pool is full, we don't blow water right out on the ground. We also want to make sure that the lid is nice and tight, the unions are tight, and that the O-rings are in place. We want to make sure this bleeder valve is tight, that this union is tight. And now we will begin to plumb the multi-cyclone to the filter and the UV system before we dig our trench from here over to the pool where the plumbing goes. Clean the first, clean the pipe, clean the fitting. Now, what you got to be very careful of when you are gluing this piece right here is not to get glue down into the impeller. So you want to shake this off and just do a light wipe on the cleaner, then wipe the fitting. And I learned this the hard way many years ago. We're going to go a little easy on the glue here. We obviously going to put plenty of glue on the pipe first, and I'm not going to re-dip. I'm just going to put the rest of the glue on that fitting, and this is called a makeup piece. This is straight 1.5 inch pipe. I'm going to turn, twist, and hold, and then we'll repeat the same thing right here. We'll take the cleaner. We'll make sure that it's nice and clean on the inside and that our pipe has all of the shine taken off it. A lot of times PVC pipe has printing on it, like ink. And a good indicator to make sure your pipe has been cleaned enough is that when you clean the pipe, all the ink should disappear, at least where the fitting is. So now we've glued the fitting, cleaned the fitting, glued both sides. Now we're going to turn, twist a quarter turn, hold, and I'd like to let that set for just about a minute or two. Let that chemical bond. And the reason, again, for the cleaner and the glue is the glue does not stick the pipe together. It actually welds the pipe together. It's a chemical reaction that takes place with two pieces of PVC as a result of the two chemicals. Here we're taking the bulb and the bulb holder on the UV, pushing it in. Make sure we've got a nice bulb connection. And there the bulb is in place. For a minute if you want. So we are laid out beyond the factory punched hole, 7 inches from the center of this hole to our new pilot hole. We're going to drill a pilot hole through the panel, which is where the center of our cutout is going to be, and then we will install the hole saw. Go ahead. All right, now we'll cut the 3-inch hole, allowing the 2 returns to operate side by side so that one can be pointed in one direction and one in the other. Nice and gently, let the drill do the work. All right. And there's our second return hole. And so now we will go ahead and install the 2 bulkhead fittings. Now we've pre-installed the 2 screws, which are our pilot screws, so you'll be able to feel where those are on the inside when the liner is on. Now the gray piece is going in through the inside of the pool, and the back nut is now being installed to tighten the return jet up to the pool. And we'll do the same thing on this one. And then we will go ahead and pre-mount the skimmer onto the back panel, which we have pre-assembled over here. Okay, now we're going to install the back body of the skimmer onto the panel so that when we install the liner, we can make our final penetrations. So Jerry's got the back body of the skimmer, and he's got 2 screws. You'll see in the middle of the vertical riser right there. Those are the retainer screws that are going to hold the skimmer body to the panel. He's going to raise it up, and you'll see it goes into the hole that does not go all the way. There you go. The very top hole that will hold that into its correct position. And that is all we need to do to that, other than the gasket, which will be placed on the inside of the pool and held with pilot screws so that once the liner is installed. All right, so the retainer screws are being used to mount the skimmer from the inside of the pool, and these screws will be put through the steel panel and through the gasket so they can be used later as a guide. There's the weir door. The weir door slides into the body, and it has 2 little ears, and it snaps right into place. Everything else on the skimmer will be installed once the liner has been put in. We'll have these 2 screws as bearing points.
It's also good to tape the outside of the gasket.
And to tape the outside of the gasket with duct tape to provide some assurance that it does not slide or move. There are some retainer tabs here, but the duct tape really does a better job. And that concludes the pre-mount of the skimmer. As you saw Jerry put the screws in the skimmer basket, that's a great place to put the hardware so that when you're looking for it later after the liner's installed, you'll know right where it's at. Okay, so now we are we are plumb and we are square, and now we're about to become level. Plumb is the vertical up and down. Square is what we did with the pins and driving the strakes in. Now we are basically going to level the panels so that the pool is level itself. Now, I realize that a lot of homeowners are not going to have a laser level. This is another great advantage to hiring a Bobcat operator that has this instrument handy that could maybe hang in here with you up until this point of the installation. Now, failing that, you can use a conventional 4-foot builder's level. And how you want to do this is to start from joint here to joint here and make sure you're level. And then I like to use a 10-foot 2x4, make sure it's good and straight, and you'll be able to get longer reference points to level from. On your straight walls, you'll also want to tie off a piece of bright colored string to make sure that the top of your wall panel is nice and strong. And you'll hear that beeping. When that beeping becomes solid is when we know we've got our pool on point in line with our laser instrument, which is already preset. All right, over here we are installing the F liner track. Now this is a piece of extruded aluminum that is designed to be flexible. It will arrive in your kit in straight pieces, and it will bend and conform to the pool. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold this up flush with the top of the panel, and we're going to just bend it on in. Make sure that the top of the track is flush with the top of the pool. And then we're going to run a 5/16 self-tapping screw into the galvanized panel. You want to do this on the radius about every 12 inches. And on the straight wall, you can do it about every 18 inches. And so we'll work our way all the way around the pool with the track. And this is what the liner is actually going to install into a little bit later on once we've prepared the base. All right, so while we had the Bobcat here, we used the Bobcat to take some of our sand. We're looking for a uniform 2 to 3 inches of sand across the bottom, and we want to build a nice cove up around the edge. So the guys right now are taking the sand that we bucketed in there. Obviously, if you don't have a Bobcat, this can be a little bit strenuous. You got to use wheelbarrows and shovels, but the goal is to have a nice even layer of sand ready for us to prepare and tamp and get it ready for the liner. And we'll be doing that shortly. Right now, we've got the Bobcat bringing in the concrete. If you don't have a Bobcat, obviously a wheelbarrow will work. It just takes a little longer. If you are using a Bobcat operator, obviously make sure they're experienced, know what they're doing, as we don't want to damage the panels. Which can happen from an inexperienced Bobcat operator. So before they get concrete down here, I'm going to put the light in. Yeah, I think I'm going to put it right here. So now we're going to install the light. For this application, because the pool is actually going to get concrete poured around it, we have to use a direct burial lighting system. And that basically installs the same way as the return jets do. And their electrician will be able to plumb off the back of this with a step down from 1.5 to 1 inch and run their lighting conduit back to the electrical. In order for us to install this, we're going to use the 3-inch hole saw. And I've already marked the hole. We're going to go 18 inches down from the top of the panel. So we're going to run our pilot hole first. And now we're going to install the, there we go. Now we're going to simply unscrew the back nut from the light panel. And we're going to turn the ring nut around so this inside flange buries over these bevels. So I'm going to pull the return panel through like so. I'm going to take the back nut and we're going to tighten that up. And really hand tight is good enough. Once the light is in there and the conduit's in place, it just needs to hold the return fitting in the panel. And that is all there is to the light niche until we mount the surface face ring on the inside, which we'll do shortly. All righty. As you can see, 1 bucket with a Bobcat equals 2 decent wheelbarrow loads. And if you can convince your Bobcat operator to hang around long enough to help you, it will definitely save you a lot of back-breaking work. As you can see, we've tried to keep to a minimum. All right, so now the time has come that we turn this into a swimming pool. So the first thing we do is we take the liner carefully out of the box, not using a knife of any kind. No knives or any sharp objects should be used to open up the liner box. And when the liner is out of the box, it's not a bad idea to let it sit and bake in the sun for a little bit. Take it over to the center of the pool. Once you've got your sand nice and smooth, You can pack it down. If it's a particularly dry time of year, you can put water on the sand. That'll help compact it. And you will see what we're doing right now is we're pulling the liner from one side center of the pool to the other side center of the pool, and he's tacking it in there. Now, the way this liner goes in is rather like a fish hook. It's got a little bead that slides into the aluminum track that we previously screwed to the top of the panels. So now that we've got the sides of the pool tacked off, if you were, we are going to pull the end of the liner into the center radius of the pool. And generally speaking, we're going to take the sidewall material and fold it inside the pool. And the sidewall material is what you see, the light blue, which is the material behind the pattern. So think of it like tacking off a north, south, east, and west. It may take a couple of attempts to get the liner square in the pool. You can see Jerry's grabbing the bottom seam of the liner. That bottom seam should be resting somewhere around the top of the cove, which is the sand cove that's been built up and pressed up into the steel panel. And you'll see he's pulling that liner around and looking for the seams that run the center of the liner. Now, it's hard to visualize that in a video, but there are center seams for this liner that will run the length of the pool. We'll let him get the liner tacked off north, south, east, and west. And once he's happy that we've got the radiuses up into the corners, we will be ready to tack off the rest of the liner. Now, once the liner is in, as you can tell, it will not come out unless you lift the liner vertically up in the air and pull it out. So once the weight of the water is in the pool, there's virtually nothing that will take this liner out. Just doing some finishing touch-up work to the bottom. If you find yourself getting a little heavy stepped in the bottom of the pool, it's always a good idea just to broom it out. It is a sand bottom pool. It's never going to be flat like concrete, but obviously we want to try to make it as smooth as we possibly can. Now, you'll notice that the staircase on the other side of the pool, I'm going to walk over there and show you what we've done in preparation for the liner installation. And that is these two sets of plastic track. So on the inside face of the step, there will be two plastic strips coming up both sides and one across the bottom. This is your retainer strip, which will have stainless steel screws attaching this to the step. This is what is in essence the gasket that holds the liner to the pool. And this is the rubber gasket. So the rubber gasket, as you can see, is already attached to the staircase. And this is the plastic receiver that goes over that. This is one of the more tricky parts of the installation. And you should take as much time as you can to be sure that the holes are lined up with the holes on the step. We also recommend not installing these treads until the water is up within a few inches of the bottom step. Okay, what we have here is what we call a pool vac, but for an average homeowner, you're going to just take your average household shop vac that has a suction hose on it. We're going to install the liner, and we're going to come around on the opposite side of the staircase if you have one. If you don't have one, it doesn't matter where you put it in. But we're going to install that hose down as far down into the pool behind the liner, duct tape any holes that you can see there. We have our vacuum kind of propped up on a broom there, but typically you want the shop vac sitting on the ground, plugged in, pulling the air out from between the liner and the pool. Now what Jerry's doing over there, he's working that liner over towards the staircase, and you'll see there's some wrinkles on the floor, and he'll get those out in a minute. But when you have a vacuum working behind the pool, then it makes the wrinkle removal a lot easier. Now we're just taking a soft, emphasize soft, bristled broom, and we're just popping that liner in towards the cove, and you can see the wrinkles are slowly but surely completely disappearing. So we're very close to introducing some water into the pool. But before we do, we want to make sure that the liner has got the best possible fit. Now, if you cannot get it quite as tight as this, water is your friend. So you can put an inch of water in the pool, and you can take those floor wrinkles and work them out to the edge. And then eventually the water pressure will fill up the rest of them. Now, we'll go over here and check in with Jerry on the staircase.
Well, I'm gonna start at the bottom. Always put tension on the liner.
So we're gonna put tension on the liner by putting your foot up against the edge of the pool step on the bottom. This allows you to have vertical pressure, simulating what the water will do as it starts to fill up. So this part of the process, you need to be careful. Make sure you don't drop your drill or your screwdriver into the pool. You'll see he's piloting his first screw, and he's already located where it is by removing the screw that was already in there. So we had a screw down at the bottom in the gasket, and he felt through the liner, pulled the screw out, which left him a hole in the liner. And now he's putting his screw and his tensioning faceplate into cushioning up to the gasket behind the faceplate. Now he's putting the little cushion buffer on top. So like a little bumper cap. Now you see the screw that was already in the pool. He's basically found the screw, put the screw head in, pulled the screw back through the liner, now putting the screw through the strip and back in through the hole that he took it out of. Now that strip is perfectly aligned for all the corresponding holes behind it. So as he tightens up and snugs up those screws, it will pull that plate up to the gasket with the liner sandwiched in between and cause it to have a nice tight seal. That process is essentially repeated across the bottom and back up the other side. If you have time on your side and you're not in a hurry, it is not a bad idea to get a foot of water in the pool and do this while there is water in the pool. That will ensure that the liner has pulled into place and adequately seated itself, so you don't have to use your foot to tension the liner. Okay, now we have installed the back body of the skimmer. It's hanging on the steel pool. We now have installed the liner, and on the inside, just like we have done with the returns and the staircase, we are going to install the faceplate. Now the faceplate has screws that go through and a gasket. Can you point that to him, Jerry? So you've got a gasket, a faceplate, and screws that go through each hole. Same thing that applies here. You pull your screw out that is protruding into the liner where the holes will already be pre-aligned. You put your first right and left corner screws in. Now everything else on the faceplate will be perfectly aligned, ready for the rest of the screws to go through. You'll notice the liner is still intact between the faceplate and the skimmer body. Once all the penetrations have been made and all the screws are installed, Jerry will carefully, with a razor blade or a knife, cut the vinyl material out now that it has been gasketed and seamed together. Be careful not to over tighten. It's important to put a fairly low torque on your driver because if you over tighten, it's possible you could damage the faceplate or strip out the screw. If this part of the installation is in any way intimidating, then another solution might be to call your local pool company and see if they have a technician that could come and assist with these penetrations. Other than this part of the installation, everything else is fairly clear in the video. So now we're pulling the screws out of the return jets directly below me. The screw holes from where he pulled them out are now perfectly aligned. He's grabbing the faceplate and carefully installing those back in to the return fitting. All right, now that all of the penetrations to the pool are intact, we've installed our 2 return jets with the 2 screws, pulled them out and installed the 4 retaining screws that hold the faceplate on, the 3 different fixtures. The light has its own faceplate and comes with that light kit. And then the staircase has been cut out on both sides and along the bottom. So we are ready to put the water in the pool to begin seating the liner. Now you'll notice it's a little shaded, but it's quite warm. So we have a standard garden hose here, 3/4 inch. We're gonna put that into the pool. We wanna emphasize that nothing sharp be attached to the end of the hose. Certain water pressure can be such that the hose will start whipping around, and if there's something sharp on the end of the hose, it could cause damage to the liner. So high volume, low pressure is always best. And we'll monitor this as the water fills. Always good to keep an eye on the liner. This looks really clean, really tight, no wrinkles, but you just never know in an hour or 2 from now if the liner was not properly seated into the bead and happens to pop out. As you're filling the pool, keep an eye on it, look at it every couple hours, make sure there's no issues with it. And if the liner does slip out in a little area, as the vacuum right over there will continue to run until we get about 12 inches of water. We'll pull the vacuum up, and then that little bit of surplus liner there will easily maneuver itself left and right, and we'll be able to remove the vacuum. Once we have 12 inches of water in the pool, generally speaking, you can remove all the vacuum. Because our installation over here is going with a full in-ground application and they're putting their own stone coping around the pool, we've chosen to show you how to install our stealth patented coping onto the top of the panel itself. Now, as I showed you previously in another video, how flexible this material is. Now we're in the shade. It's starting towards the evening. It's cooling down a little bit, so it's going to become a little less flexible. So when you are bending this around the pool, it is always good to do that in full sun. Now, if you remember, this is the deck application. If I had a piece of 5/4 deck board, it would snug right up underneath here. So how we mount this to the panel, this is a 14 gauge galvanized panel, is we're going to look, you'll notice there's a ridge missing on the top cap. That is your pilot hole. So we're going to just, for this application, we're going to go ahead and screw one of our retainers here. A little further in. Yeah, there you go. And so all we've done is drilled right through the very top layer. We're going to do another one over here. And we're going to do it about 1 inch back. Let me show you why in a minute. So now we have 2 pilot holes. We're going to take a 5/16 self-tapper, and we're going to take, and we are going to now screw that. Careful not to tighten it too much. So you'll see he's got that nicely holding this down to the panel. But you don't want to over tighten that so that the screw goes through the plastic. We're going to do another one on this end. Okay, so now we're going to use a different coping. We're going to imagine for a minute that you're transitioning from a wood deck to pouring concrete. So here is a piece of the solid back material. We're going to put that right up on top of the pool. Now you'll see this joint does not look very pretty up on top here. And that's totally okay, and we'll show you why in just a minute. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to run a screw right there. And we'll do one more down here while we're at it. Now bear in mind, normally you'll have your liner track and your liner coming right down. So you've got a nice reveal here to keep all that hidden. Now we're going to run our 5/16 self-tapper. Slow. We want to run it on a slow speed rather than a fast speed so that we don't, there you go. When it bites, a little more. There you go. Same thing here. You see the screw going through, not too much. Keep going, keep going. There you go. So you can see the screw has nicely sunk the coping back down. So now, let's go ahead and do one more hole right here in the center. Imagine this was an 8-foot piece. Obviously, you're going to have to put some fasteners in the middle of the coping. So we're just going to imagine for a minute that that has got a screw in it and a plug. So we have these little matching gray beauty plugs. So if you have a long piece of coping, and that can cover up nicely so that your screw hole is fully enclosed. Now on the ends here and here, we have a special coping that snaps a clip. In fact, we're gonna run it from the back. And so as you can see, we have just transitioned from wood to concrete, and the clip has nicely covered up our fastening holes. And we have 2 different types of clip. We have the deck clip right here, and you can see this is designed to snap onto the back of the deck clip and go down over that. And then we have the full clip, which goes onto the back of the coping like so. And so there you have 2 pieces of coping installed. Your tools needed are a 1/2 inch drill bit, a 5/16 nut driver, and either a skill saw or a sawzall to cut the plastic with. And ideally, if you're working with a radius and a bend, then try to install this during the middle of the day. And if you're building this pool yourself, then you have the timing. If you want to wait and put this material on the next day when you have time in full sun, then that's highly recommended. So we're almost done. And we started this morning, guys, at 8 o'clock, 8:30. We've had lots of stopping and starting and video interruption. And so let's check our time. What's the time right now?
4:30.
It's 4:30. So granted, we do this every day. We got a couple of guys out here training. We've had video stops and starts. But in basically one day, we've built a backyard swimming pool that is now ready for the homeowner to venture into the final stages of concrete decking or building a patio around it. So we're going to go over and wrap up our plumbing. We're almost done over there. And then we'll be calling it a wrap. And thank you all for watching the video. And congratulations on your purchase of a Stealth semi-inground swimming pool. So the best way to bend the coping, and we are not by a swimming pool right now, is to preheat it either in direct sun, and this would be the edge of your pool, and you can see that with relative ease, applying pressure down, we can bend the material to conform itself to the radius of the pool. The lip on the back of the coping will catch on the back of the pool, and then the hardware and fastening procedure that we showed previously in the video will hold this in place as you bend it. So really a great process to do in direct sunlight, as it allows the material to have more elasticity. All right, so we've built our 2 90-degree manifolds for our returns. And now we're going to take our flex PVC, which is the most user-friendly form of pipe to use while installing the plumbing on your pool. We're going to make sure the end of the PVC is perfectly straight, cut at a 90 degrees, and then we are going to clean the pipe with clear PVC cleaner. Some people like to use purple primer underground to ensure that bright colored primer allows you to see what's been cleaned and what has not been cleaned. We have ran our skimmer line. So there are 2 lines that come off the skimmer. One is capped and the other one is fed back to the pump on the filter. And the second line is the line that's being installed right now. Now we have 2 lines. We have one for the suction. So the water is going to be pulling out of your skimmer, going back to your pump and filter system, and then the clean water after it's been filtered and purified with the UV system will return back to the pool. In this case, we're going to be building a deck and or patio over the top here, and we're already below grade, about a foot, so we'll have easy 18 inches below the ground. And now they're wrapping up around the filter pad, terminating their lines into the pump and filter system. So here we have a 2-inch ball valve, and we're running 1.5 inches to terminate into the suction side where it will pump up through the filter system, in through the sanitizer and back into the swimming pool. As you can see, the flexible PVC allows you to limit how many fittings you need. Every 90-degree fitting you can eliminate is actually going to produce a savings of about 3 gallons per minute. Now he's just terminating his final lines. and this pool will be ready to be turned on as soon as the electrician has come and hooked all the components up. We have a 110 supply for the UV system, and the CTX pump can run either on 110 or 220, and that will be up to the homeowner and the electrician to decide how they want to hook that up. Almost down to the wire.